An Echo in the Fog. En route to Dachau, April 3rd and 4th, 1945. Fantastic rumors are circulating during the last days of March. The Allies are approaching. Our liberators, the Americans and the English, are very near. Then other rumors reach us. We are going to be evacuated, shipped eastward. We are going to be transported to Austria. There is nothing to indicate the rumor's validity. Our work routine is the same. There is no change at the factory. None of the German workers reveal any awareness of imminent events. No covert remarks of regret come from Mr. Scheidel, who has become my friend. Nothing. Then, one April morning, at the conclusion of Zalappel, the Oberstführer reads the order. Tomorrow morning we are to be transported to Dachau under guard. Not a word of this is to be discussed with anyone, not in camp, not at work. The day laden with apprehension drags on. Mr. Scheidel is oblivious of my predicament. Why can't I tell him goodbye? Why can't I convey my fears or my thanks for the surreptitious help? I remember the morning when he put a small brown paper bag on the workbench and hinted with a wink that I take it. There were dried, thin bread crusts in the bag. When I attempted to thank him, he averted his eyes in panic and acted feverishly preoccupied with work. I hid the brown bag under my dress on the way back to camp, and Mommy and I eagerly shared the marvelous snack. His gesture encouraged me to ask him for paper. Paper? His astonishment had baffled and worried me. Did you say paper? What kind of paper? What do you need paper for? I knew it was risky to ask for anything, especially an item like paper, but had not realized the extent of its gravity. I regretted my mistake, but was obliged to answer his question. Any paper, just a small piece, for writing. For writing? What do you want to write? A poem. I want to write a poem. Some time ago, I used to write poems, but forgive me, I didn't intend to. Ah, a poem. You're a poet, huh? A poet. Mr. Scheidel's rasping laughter frightened me. But the next morning he furtively placed a few yellow slips of paper wrapped in crumpled brown paper on my lap under the workbench. This was the onset of Mr. Scheidel's clandestine paper smuggling operation and the onset of my career as camp poet. Goodbye, Mr. Scheidel, fated old friend. Goodbye, Montage. And you, Herr Zerkubo, the monument of stony superiority. As you emerge from your glass enclosure, will you notice that we are gone? The journey through Augsburg is a high point. Our streetcar snakes around Gothic buildings lining the cobblestone streets. The city is gradually receding into a fine spring mist which seems to envelop every silhouette of the past. Goodbye, Augsburg. I had hoped you would be the scene of our liberation. I had dreamt countless times of Allied troops marching toward me on your cobblestone streets, bringing liberty with the rattle of armored trucks and tanks. I had a sweet, mysterious premonition of freedom when I first caught sight of your Gothic charm, when I first breathed your reassuring, civilized air 8 months ago. 8 months of dogged dreams, hopes, and prayers. Now we are leaving you, Mommy and I, and all of us still prisoners. Heading for what future? Dachau. What awaits us in Dachau? At the terminal, we disembark and continue on foot. Our journey leads through bombed-out streets, gutted neighborhoods. The last 7 months have not left the city unscathed. The train station is also in ruins. The row of cattle cars is far beyond. We wade through heaps of rubble to reach the cattle cars, and the train takes off instantly. By nightfall, we arrive at a gloomy, dark place called Landsberg, and we march on a narrow, rocky road through stark landscape past barren trees, endless telephone poles. In the gathering dusk, flocks of crows perched on the telephone wires are strikingly etched against the metallic sky. Their shrill cries send a chill down my spine. Camp Landsberg is a subsidiary of Dachau, a sprawling, enormous camp, but its austere gates do not open for us. The camp is full to capacity. Inmates from several other camps in the vicinity arrived before us. We are lined up near the gate and wait far into the night. Our guards telephone for orders, and during the early dawn, the orders reach us. Back to the cattle cars. Thank God we are leaving this ominous place. During the late afternoon, the train halts at a place called Muhldorf. Open trucks are awaiting us at the station, and we are driven among tented green fields and then through the gates of a small, overcrowded camp. Skeletal inmates flock noisily to meet us with huge, hysterical eyes, eager faces, and rapid, animated questions. What camp are we coming from? What have we been doing there? Where are we from originally? They are women, emaciated beyond anything we have seen. Even the inmates at Landsberg, who had flocked to the fence and whose shriveled appearances had shocked us, were not so starved as these excited skeletons. They speak with rasping voices, clamoring for answers and more answers. Soon we find out that typhus raged at Muhldorf and at all the other camps of the Dachau complex all winter long. It was this devastating disease that killed about 50 people daily and left the survivors in such a skeletal state. The male inmates behind the barbed wire fence look even more ravaged. In less than an hour, we find out that there are men from Samoria, our hometown, among them. And a bit of heaven. Bubby, my brother, is in Waldlager, Muhldorf's twin camp in the nearby forest. Mommy and I can barely contain our excitement. How can we get to meet Bubby? We find out that trucks with provisions go to Waldlager daily, and if we are lucky, we might be picked for the work commando of unloading. If we persist in volunteering for this physically taxing assignment, we might eventually be selected to go along with the trucks. The next morning, 100 women are selected for transfer to Waldlager. Mommy and I are among them. Right after Zalapel, we are put on trucks and driven through luscious green woods. The sun's rays and a dainty breeze dapple the greenery, and I feel happiness tremble within me. Mommy and I are in ecstasy. Everything is turning out beautifully. Oh, my dear God. Thank you, my dear God. Waldlager looks like a forest of oversized mushrooms. Hundreds of small grassy mounds conceal an underground world of bunkers where thousands of inmates are housed, 50 to each long burrow. Our dark, dank hole is lit by a small window in the ceiling, which, just like the entrance of the bunker, is camouflaged by tall grass. In our excitement, Mommy and I can only think of Bubby. We find out that the men's camp is right beyond the barbed wire fence we saw nearby, and when the guards' backs are turned, it is possible to meet the men and even talk to them after work and the evening Zalapel. Mommy and I spend the day anxiously waiting for nightfall. Finally, after Zalapel, Mommy and I stand by the fence, huddled together against a relentless downpour. The entire camp is shrouded in haze, and no living soul seems to stir on the other side of the fence. Just as Mommy and I resolve to make our way back to our bunker, two stick-like figures materialize from the mist and slowly approach the fence. One of them mutters in Yiddish, his voice barely projecting across the fence. "Are you from the new transport?" "Yes." "From which camp?" "From an airplane factory in Augsburg." "You must have had it good there. You look strong. Where are you from?" "Czechoslovakia, Hungarian territory. Samoria is the town's name." "There are some men here from Samoria." "We've heard. That's why we're here," Mommy says, and her voice rises in anticipation. Do you know my son, Bubby Friedman? Tall, blond. He was an interpreter in Auschwitz. Do you know him? Yes, we know him. He's in a bunker together with others from Samoria. Wait right here. We will tell him to come. The two figures disappear with a slow, shuffling gait into the milky darkness, and we are left standing in the brutally cold rain. The barbed wire fence looms like an eerie black web, with hanging raindrops forever uniting and dripping into dark pools on the ground. The piece of bread from Lena is becoming soggy and wet in Mommy's hand. Lena was assigned to the kitchen commando this morning, and she smuggled the bread from the kitchen. She gave it to Mommy during the Zalapel. Mrs. Friedman, give this to your son when you see him tonight. The men in this camp get very little food. Out of the gloom, a tall, thin shape now emerges and comes toward us. Ah, Bubby! But when he is nearer, we see a mere skeleton with wild, dark hollows for eyes. A tattered prison uniform hangs in shreds from its frame. The apparition comes with a painful limp and a loud clatter. A tin can hanging about its waist makes an awful din every time the figure takes another step. When it reaches the fence, the figure stops clumsily and positions itself a few steps from us. From such close proximity, we can see the face clearly. It is the face of a skeleton, with parchment-like skin covered with patches of light fuzz and scabs. There are severe bruises on the high cheekbones. It's a face unlike anything I have ever seen. It resembles faces in the science fiction magazines my brother Bubby used to read. As the apparition stands there silently staring at us, a horrible certainty grips my insides. Bubby. It is he. I knew it. Mommy's eyes open wide with horror. This is not he. This is not Bubby. Bubby's eyes focus on the piece of bread in Mommy's hand. His voice is an unearthly gasp. You may throw the bread over the fence, Mommy. The guard does not mind. Mommy's shriek is a blood-curdling howl. Bubby! Is it you? Oh, God, is it really you? Mommy, throw the bread over the fence. Mommy swallows hard. She swings her arm, and the soggy piece of bread flies above the barbed wire and lands in a puddle at Bubby's feet. With the deliberate, jerky motions of a robot, Bubby bends over to pick it up, but stumbles, and with an ear-shattering clatter rolls into the mud. Mommy gasps. I grasp her shoulder to give her comfort, but cannot control my violent trembling. We watch aghast as Bubby scrambles to his feet and, bread in hand, trudges away, clumps of mud tumbling from his tatters. We wait, but he does not turn around. He keeps limping on, and soon his figure is swallowed by the twilight. But the clatter of his tin can continues to echo in the fog. It reverberates in my being all night long.